A few days ago, some of the biggest banks in America reported their earnings. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Citigroup, profits across the board, sharply higher than last year. Record numbers, champagne-worthy numbers, and somewhere in your city right now, someone who works at one of those banks is going to open their own bank account and feel nothing close to champagne. Because here's the strange part. You've been told over and over that a strong economy means a strong you. That when companies do well, you do well. That profit trickles down to your paycheck eventually. But it doesn't. Not the way you were told. And the reason isn't a conspiracy. It isn't a villain twirling a mustache in a boardroom. It's something quieter. Something built into the machinery of the modern economy itself. And once you see it, you can't unsee it every time you check your own bank balance. Let's start with the number everyone was watching. For decades, there's been a simple, comforting idea. As a company's workers become more productive, more efficient, more valuable, their pay rises to match. That idea has a name. Economists call it the productivity pay link. And here's the twist. For most of the 20th century, it actually held. Wages and productivity climbed together, almost like two dance partners moving in step. Then, somewhere around the 1970s, the partners let go of each other's hands. Productivity kept climbing, output kept climbing, corporate profits kept climbing. Wages adjusted for what things actually cost, mostly didn't. Researchers at institutions like the Economic Policy Institute have tracked this gap for years, and the pattern is consistent even as the exact numbers shift year to year. Workers have been producing more value than they're paid for, and that extra value hasn't vanished. It's gone somewhere else. So where did it go? Think about that for a second. Not lost, not destroyed, just redirected. Somewhere in some ledger, in some quarterly report, that value still exists. It's sitting on a balance sheet right now, wearing a different name. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because the answer isn't a single villain. It's a redirection. Some of it went to shareholders through dividends and stock buybacks. Some of it went to executive pay, which has ballooned relative to the average worker's paycheck. Some of it went into the balance sheets of companies simply sitting on more cash, more reserves, more cushion than they've ever needed. Economist Thomas Piketty spent years studying this exact phenomenon on a global scale. His core finding, stripped of the academic language, is unsettlingly simple. When the return on capital outpaces the growth of wages, the people who already own things pull further ahead of the people who only work for a living. Banks are one of the purest examples of this in action. A bank doesn't sell you a product you touch. It sells you access to money itself. It profits from the spread between what it pays you for your deposits and what it charges someone else to borrow that same money. When interest rates move, when lending picks up, when trading desks have a good quarter, that profit shows up almost immediately on a bank's earnings report. Your raise does not move on the same schedule. Here's a question worth sitting with. If the company you work for had a record year, did you feel it in your paycheck? Or did you just feel it in the headlines? Now, let's rewind further, because this pattern is older than any of us. In the late 1800s, American railroads were some of the most profitable companies on earth. Rail barons built mansions the size of city blocks. Meanwhile, the people laying the actual track were often paid in company scrip, redeemable only at company stores that overcharged them for basic goods. The company profited twice. Once from the railroad. Once from the very wages it paid out. It took decades, strikes, and eventually federal labor law to close that particular loop. You can find the same shape again in the 1920s, right before the Great Depression. Corporate profits soared through most of that decade. Productivity soared with them. Economists who study the period, including work associated with Mariner Eccles, who would later run the Federal Reserve, pointed to the same underlying imbalance. Too much income flowing to the top, not enough purchasing power flowing to everyone else, until the whole system finally buckled under its own weight. Eccles put it in blunt, almost mechanical terms. An economy is like a wheel, he argued. Money has to keep moving through everyone's hands to keep the wheel turning. Pile it all up at the top instead, and the wheel eventually stops. The mechanism has changed shape since then. It's not company scrip anymore. It's stock buybacks, executive compensation structures, and a financial system that rewards owning assets far more generously than it rewards labor. But the underlying shape of the story hasn't changed nearly as much as you'd hope. Here's where it gets stranger still, and this is the part most people never think about. You've probably heard the phrase, "The stock market isn't the economy." It sounds like a throwaway line. It isn't. Roughly half of all stock market wealth in the United States is held by a small slice of the wealthiest households. When the market surges, when bank stocks post record highs, when profits beat expectations, that wealth concentrates upward almost automatically. Meanwhile, most working households don't hold enough stock for a good earnings season to meaningfully change their financial life. Their financial life is governed by something completely different: the price of groceries, the interest rate on their credit card, the rent due on the first of the month. Two economies, running on two different clocks, reported in the same news cycle as if they were one. This is why a headline like "Wall Street Post's Record Profits" can sit right next to "Americans Report Rising Financial Stress" in the very same newspaper, on the very same day, and both can be completely true. Here's the part that stings a little. The people whose labor helps generate those record profits, the tellers, the loan officers, the call center employees, the junior analysts working past midnight, are often the same people who feel the least of the upside. Their effort shows up in the earnings report. Their reward mostly doesn't show up in their next paycheck. That's not laziness. That's not bad luck. It's a structural gap between where value is created and where value is captured, and it has been studied and restudied by labor economists for half a century. Now here's the modern mirror, because this isn't just a history lesson. Right around those same earnings, the government also released new inflation data, the kind of number that decides whether your grocery bill, your gas tank, and your rent feel a little more bearable or a little more brutal over the coming months. Notice the timing: record corporate profits and a fresh read on the pressure squeezing everyday spending, landing in the exact same week, competing for the exact same headlines. One of those numbers will get the flashier coverage. Bank earnings usually do. They come with charts that go up and to the right, and up and to the right is a story television loves to tell. The other number is quieter. It doesn't have a stock ticker attached to it, but it's the one actually running through your life every single day, whether or not anyone puts it on a graphic. Psychologist and economist Richard Thaler built an entire career on a related idea called money illusion, the tendency for people to judge their financial situation by the number on their paycheck, rather than by what that number can actually buy. A raise feels good even if prices rose faster than your pay did. A record profit headline feels like good news, even when it has nothing to do with your own bank account. The illusion isn't stupidity. It's just how human brains are wired to process numbers instead of purchasing power. Think about the last time you got a raise. Really think about it. There's a specific kind of satisfaction in seeing a bigger number land in your account. It feels like winning. It feels like progress. But if prices quietly climbed faster than that raise did, you didn't actually win anything. You just got better at losing slowly enough not to notice. That's the trap. Not a scandal, not a scheme, just a mismatch between what your brain registers as good news and what your bank account can actually afford. Wall Street doesn't suffer from this illusion, by the way. Traders and analysts are trained to strip it out immediately. They talk in terms of real returns, adjusted for inflation, almost reflexively. It's one of the quiet advantages that comes with being close to the machinery of money instead of just living downstream of it. You can borrow that habit for free. It just takes remembering to ask one extra question every time a number sounds impressive. So what do you actually do with all of this? Not much, in the sense of fixing the system. That's not really in your hands, and no single person's spending habits are going to close a gap this old or this structural. But there's something smaller and more useful you can do, and it starts with a habit shift. Stop reading, "The market had a great week," as information about your own finances. It almost never is. Start paying closer attention to the quieter numbers instead. Inflation reports, interest rate decisions, the actual cost of the things you buy every week. Those are the numbers running your life, even when they don't make the flashiest headline. And when you see a bank post a record quarter, let it be useful information rather than a source of comparison. It tells you something true about the direction of capital in the economy. It tells you almost nothing about whether you personally are doing well or badly. Those are two different questions, wearing the same headline. There's a strange kind of relief in seeing that clearly. Once you stop expecting your own finances to move in lockstep with the stock ticker, you stop measuring your life by a number that was never really about you in the first place. You start asking better questions instead. Is my actual purchasing power holding steady? Is the gap between what I earn and what things cost getting wider or narrower? Those questions don't trend on financial news, but they're the ones that actually decide how your month feels. So when the earnings rolled in, and the champagne corks popped somewhere on a trading floor, and somebody, somewhere, checked their own bank account expecting to feel some of that same magic, they won't. And now you know exactly why.